instructions on using the interpretation services being provided today. Mr. Grigg.
Thank you, Secretary Tepper. So as you can see on the Zoom screen with the interpreters who are visible, we are providing interpretation services for this meeting in Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, and Haitian Creole, as well as English. And whether you are here or on Zoom, you will have access to the interpretation services being provided. If you are here in the room, you can access interpretation by using a receiver and headphone setup, which is over on the table to the left of the bench if you're looking at us. Jonathan, are you going to be over there? Okay, yeah, Mr. Mengesha will be helping folks who may need headphones, if anyone. So if you would like to get a headphone and transmitter, a receiver rather, please see Mr. Mengesha and he will set you up. These instructions will be translated into the other languages, so just in case anyone did not understand, it will be repeated. On the receivers, Spanish is channel 1, Portuguese is channel 2, Chinese is channel 3, and Haitian Creole is channel 4. You can adjust the volume as needed. For those of you on Zoom, in just a moment, we will activate interpretation on Zoom. And after I do that, you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen that will allow you to select interpretation. You'll click that icon and make your language selection. For example, to hear translation in English, please select English. After the interpreters read these instructions in Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, and Haitian Creole, I will activate the channels in Zoom so users can select their preferred interpretation language. Again, please make sure to make your language selection after the globe appears. You may not have it active right now. And with that, I will turn to Martha and the interpreters at Fox Translation to repeat these in the 4 languages.
Buenos días, gracias a la secretaria Tepper. Como se puede ver en la pantalla de Zoom, ofrecemos servicios de interpretación para esta reunión en español, portugués, chino y creol haitiano, además de inglés. Tendrá acceso a los servicios de interpretación ofrecidos el día de hoy, sin importar si está aquí en la sala o en Zoom. Si se encuentra en la sala, puede acceder al servicio de interpretación utilizando un receptor y audífonos. Si necesita un juego de receptor y audífonos y no los tiene, pase a la mesa que se encuentra a la izquierda del banco en el fondo de la sala para que le ayuden. Cuando utilice el receptor, el español se encuentra en el canal 1, el portugués en el canal 2, el mandarín en el 3 y el creol haitiano en el canal 4. Puede ajustar el volumen según sea necesario. Para los que se encuentran en Zoom, en unos momentos activaremos la interpretación en Zoom. Después de hacerlo, en la parte inferior de la pantalla verá un botón con un globo que dice interpretación. Haga clic en el globo y luego seleccione su idioma. Por ejemplo, para escuchar la traducción al español, seleccione español. Después de que todos los intérpretes lean estas instrucciones en español, portugués, chino y creol haitiano, activaré los canales en Zoom para que los usuarios puedan seleccionar el idioma de interpretación de su preferencia. Una vez más, seleccione su idioma después de que aparezca el icono del globo. Entonces, ahora paso la palabra al intérprete de portugués.
Bom dia, sejam todos bem-vindos. Muito obrigada, secretária Tepper. A audiência de hoje estará disponibilizada para todos os idiomas, esteja você aqui presencialmente ou conectado via Zoom. Os idiomas serão interpretados em espanhol, a audiência será interpretada em espanhol, português, chinês e crioulo haitiano. Se você estiver aqui presencialmente e desejar fazer uso da interpretação, por favor, dirija-se à mesa que está no lado esquerdo, faça uso do aparelho e do fone de ouvido. Uma vez iniciada a interpretação, você pode ajustar o volume e sirva melhor. Uma vez habilitada o canal de interpretação, você vai ver um ícone na parte inferior da sua tela, e a partir daí o menu de cascata com os idiomas, ah, mais uma vez, espanhol, português, chinês e crioulo haitiano. Ah, muito obrigado. Eu vou passar agora a palavra para o próximo intérprete, que é o intérprete de mandarim. Thank you. I'll pass on the word now to the Chinese interpreter.
我们呢今天会为这个会议呢提供就是不同的翻译服务的，那这是包括这个西班牙语、葡萄牙语、中文、海地克里奥尔语的翻译服务，同时也是有英文的。那无论呢你是在现场或者你是使用这个 Zoom 的服务的话，你今天也可以使用这个的翻译服务。那如果你现在是在现场这个房间的话，那你呢就可以透过这个接收器，还有呢这个耳机来使用这个的翻译服务。如果你是需要一个接收器或者一个耳机的话，而你现在是没有的，麻烦你就是到我们房间后方的那个桌子，然后就是可以摄取。然后呢，这个频度的话，这个西班牙语呢就是在这个频道的1号，然后这个的葡萄牙文就是2号，中文就是3号的频道，然后最后这个海地克里奥尔语就是4号的频道。然后如果你有需要的话，你就可以按照你自己的需求，然后调整这个的音量。然后如果你现在是在 Zoom 上面参与的话，那稍后呢，我们就会在 Zoom 上面启动这个的翻译服务。那我启动后之后，你就会在荧幕的底部，你会看到一个地球的一个图标按钮，上面会写着翻译，然后你就可以点击那个的地球按钮，然后就选择你的语言。例如说你要听英语的翻译，你就可以选择英语，然后在翻译人员使用西班牙语、葡萄牙语、中文，还有海地克里奥尔语读完这些说明以后，我会在 Zoom 上面启动这个翻译的频道，那你们呢就可以选择你们喜欢的翻译语言。那再次提醒，你是需要在这个地球图标出现后进行这个语言选择。谢谢。I will pass this on to Haitian Creole interpreter.
Thank you. Bonjour, merci un peu, Monsieur Tepper. Bonjour tout le monde qui a suivi nous sur Zoom. Instruction ça yo, nous avons gagné pour nous traduire dans l'autre langue. Donc, si toutefois on pas comprendre, nous sommes capables toujours répéter ça. Donc, pour mon en espagnol, yo, passer Chanel là, c'est numéro 1, et nous avons gagné portugais qui est numéro 2, et Chanel là, numéro 3. Après ça, nous avons gagné créole haïtien qui est numéro 4. Ou capable toujours ajuster et volume là, déjà que nous modèle là, là au fin ajuster volume là, ou capable monter sous zoom pour nous capable activer channel interprétation. Ou regarder en bas ou après un globe là dans qui gagne une icône ou monter sous icône là pour capable choisir qui langue que vous voulez. Après ça, il y a une chance pour capable sélectionner interprétation. Après ça, ou sélectionner langue là. Par exemple, si toutefois vous avez une traduction anglais, s'il vous plaît, vous choisir anglais. Et si toutefois, après que vous finissez toute instruction en espagnol, portugais, chinois, créole haïtien, les fini, moi bien pour moi activer et ça dans Zoom pour nous. Après ça, nous capables de choisir langue préférée nous. Encore, pour nous capables d'assurer nous, et que tout langage est capable bien sélectionner, nous avons gagné pour nous faire place ensemble avec Madame Mata qui a gagné et pour lui confirmer tout ça pour nous. Après, là, nous finissons nous toutes instructions en espagnol, portugais, chinois et puis créole haïtien. Je vais pour m'activer channel là sur l'application Zoom là, côté que nous capables de sélectionner langue préférée nous. Donc, encore, assurer que langue ça que ou sélectionner, il paraît dans le globe qui est en bas. Donc, ça qui arrive tout ou pas gagner et ou pas gagner interprétation active pour Kounia. Et avec toute information ça nous bail là, merci à pile, nous pourrons faire place ensemble avec moun qui pourra commencer. Host, you may now begin.
Thank you very much. So I will ask now that the interpreters please turn your cameras off. Thank you for giving us the instructions. We will be activating the interpretation channels now. So we're going live in just 1 second. Okay, again, the reminder is channel 1, Spanish, channel 2, Portuguese, channel 3, Chinese, channel 4, Haitian Creole. One other translation interpretation instruction for today. If you are interested in having translated closed captions, that is also possible on Zoom. And I will just show you what that is how that works. So at the bottom of the screen, you see the box that says CC for closed captions. Click on the up arrow, and the language that you would like to have the AI translated, or excuse me, voice to text information translated. Oops, went away. You will select your language under My Caption Language. That didn't quite happen.
Nope, it did.
Oh, wait a second. Yeah, I guess I have to activate. Okay, so English. So this is why I'm seeing English scrolling along the bottom, but I could have selected any of these other languages, and you'd get AI quality interpretation, which is about 80%. And if we do have a change of speaking language, so someone comes up to comment in one of the other languages for today, then Zoom is not smart enough to know that someone has just changed language on us, and you will have to tell it by going to my speaking language, which is very illogical since it's somebody else's speaking language. And again, same thing, select the language that you think you're hearing. Good luck. I hope you took foreign language in college or high school. And that's it.
Right. Thank you very much, Andy, and welcome everyone. This is a hybrid meeting of the Energy Facilities Siting Board taking place at the offices of the Department of Public Utilities, 1 South Station, Boston, and on Zoom. And I will note that this is the first time that the board has met in this room. It's quite something, very different from our old digs. So thank you all for the work that you have done in setting this room up so nicely today and making it so comfortable, including the snacks. So thank you. This hybrid format is intended to allow everyone to see and hear all speakers, whether here or in Zoom. With me today are the other members of the Siting Board, who I'll introduce in a moment. The meeting today concerns EFSB 22-03, DPU 22-1, known as the Greater Cambridge Energy Program, which I will refer to as the project. The project includes 1, 8 new 115 kV underground transmission lines that will be housed in a total of 5 new duct banks, totaling approximately 8.3 miles in a portion of Cambridge, Somerville, and the Austin-Brighton area of Boston. 2, a new 115 kV substation, which will be located in an underground vault on the property between Broadway and Binney Streets in the Kendall Square area of Cambridge. And 3, modifications to certain existing substations in Cambridge, Somerville, and Brighton. The purpose of today's meeting is to listen to comments, deliberate, and vote on whether to approve with conditions, or reject the tentative decision issued by the Siting Board staff on June 17th. The Siting Board provided notice of today's meeting to the following entities: the service list for this proceeding, municipal offices and officials in the cities of Cambridge, Boston, and Somerville, state legislative members from the project area, and community-based organization in the project area. The notice was also posted on the Siting Board's website and the company website. In addition, notice of this board meeting was provided under the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law. The notice and the tentative decision were provided in English, Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, and Haitian Creole. Now let me introduce the members of the Energy Facility Siting Board participating in today's meeting. Chair James Van Nordstrom, who is Chair of the Department of Public Utilities, Stacy Rubin, the Commissioner of the Department of Public Utilities, Elizabeth Mahoney, the Commissioner of the Department of Energy Resources, Bonnie Heupel, the Commissioner of Department of Environmental Protection, Jonathan Costco, General Counsel and Designee of Yvonne Howe, the Secretary of the Economic Development. Hi, John. And John Bonifilio, the public member. And Greg Watson, also a public member. Also with us, as you know, is Andy Green, the Director of the Siting Board, He's here and will be serving as our Zoom meeting host. At this time, I'd like to ask the attorneys to make their appearances.
Appearing on behalf of Eversource Energy, David Rosenzweig and Erica Hafner. Thank you.
Appearing on behalf of the City of Cambridge, George Olson.
Appearing on behalf of MIT, John DeTore and Lauren Liss.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before we begin the substance of the meeting, I'll provide some important information about how we will be conducting this meeting. The Siding Board is conducting today's meeting both in person and remotely on Zoom. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on the Siding Board's YouTube channel. For our remote attendees, if you're having any difficulty with the Zoom, please call or text 857-200-0065 for any assistance. I want to note some important procedures we will be following. All board members must be audible to each other and the audience. If there are significant technical difficulties, I will stop the meeting to resolve the issue. The stenographer is present today to transcribe everything said to make an official record of this meeting. Everyone should speak slowly and clearly and allow the prior speaker to finish before you begin speaking. These procedures will help ensure an accurate transcript. The sequence of the board meeting today is as follows. We will listen to comment from public officials. Then the Siding Board's presiding officer will make a presentation, followed by comments from Eversource and the parties in the proceeding. And finally, we will listen to public comment. The board will then begin its deliberations on the tentative decision, consider possible amendments to the tentative decision, and finally vote on the tentative decision. We'll take a 10-minute break at 10:30 and another at noon. If we need to continue past 1, we will take a 30-minute lunch break and then resume at 1:30. We have provided some light snacks for everyone, which are on the table. Public commenters should have pre-registered as described in the notice. If you have not pre-registered, we'll do our best to accommodate you within the time available. So we are now ready to begin the substantive portion of this meeting. There is one item on the agenda this morning, consideration of the tentative decision, EFSB 22-03, DPU 22-21, known as the Greater Cambridge Energy Program. So let me begin by calling any elective or appointed officials who have signed up to speak regarding the tentative decision. Municipal officials from Cambridge and Somerville may speak now or wait until as an intervener. Do we have any pre-registered?
We have not received any pre-registered public official speakers, but as you mentioned, the City of Cambridge is present, also an intervener.
We'll wait to make our comments.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, next, we're going to ask the presiding officer, Donna Sharkey, to present the tentative decision.
Good morning, Secretary Tepper and members of the Siding Board. My name is Donna Sharkey. I'm the presiding officer in this matter. I'm here to present the staff's tentative decision and proposed amendment sheet and to answer any questions you may have regarding this proceeding. With me here today are other members of the Siding Board staff who worked on the case. Andrew Green, Siding Board Director, Joan Foster Evans, General Counsel of the Siding Board, Wayne Wong, the Assistant Director of the Siding Division, and 3 siding analysts with the Siding Division, Brian Wilmer, Smitha Divakar, and Caleb Chang. The Greater Cambridge Energy Program, which we'll refer to as the project, proposed by Eversource, is a major electric transmission and distribution infrastructure project with new facilities to be located in Cambridge, Somerville, and the Allston-Brighton area of Boston. The project is anchored by a new underground substation at the former Blue Garage parking site in Kendall Square. Okay. I wasn't sure if this would move.
Sorry. Very jury rigged.
If anybody is having problems hearing, just let me know, please. This will be the first underground substation in the Commonwealth and one of the first in the United States. Another unique aspect of this project is the collaboration between Eversource and the City of Cambridge, the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority, community stakeholders, and Boston Properties, Inc., the developer of a large mixed-use project in Kendall Square, which includes the substation site. The initial consideration of a suitable substation site began almost a decade ago, with two previous sites, most recently on Fulkerson Street, eventually rejected by the company in response to community concerns. The eventual selection of the site as part of a large mixed-use development project will provide electric reliability in Cambridge, Somerville, and Alston and Brighton area, given the significant increases in new developments as well as the now growing electric loads of existing customers as electrification of buildings and transportation begins to take root. In addition to the substation, the project includes 8 new 115 kilovolt transmission lines housed in 5 underground duct banks, primarily below public roadways, linking the new substation to 4 existing substations located in Somerville, East Cambridge, Cambridgeport for the Putnam substation, and Brighton. The dramatic increase in demand is producing significant stresses on the existing distribution system, requiring the company to take interim actions by transferring loads among the network of substations, installing additional transformers where possible, and operating equipment at levels well above normal performance parameters. Once complete, the project will enable Eversource to meet existing and expanding customer electricity needs in the project area without continuing the need for reliance on these stopgap measures. The project will also help the Commonwealth and area municipalities meet their net zero decarbonization goals and maintain safe and safe electric service. The record in this case includes an evaluation of alternative methods such as distributed generation, battery energy storage systems, energy efficiency and demand response, and solar voltaic installations. The tentative decision found these types of resources, even in combination, are simply not available at a scale that can produce a solution to the magnitude of the forecasted capacity deficiencies that are expected to occur under distribution and transmission contingency conditions. The siting board reviews projects to ensure the final project design minimizes costs and environmental impacts while ensuring a reliable energy supply. The tentative decision found that the proposed project will avoid, minimize, and mitigate environmental and community impacts from constructing and operating the project's underground substation, 8.3 miles of new transmission lines in Cambridge, Somerville, and Brighton, and modifications at existing area substations. The scale of the project in a densely populated urban area required careful consideration of the least impactful routing locations, construction methods, and approval conditions. Consistent with the integral role of the municipality and the residents in selecting the substation site, Eversource's route selection process included extensive meetings with the municipalities and area stakeholders over the 2-year period. The tentative decision requires that the company's outreach to the community continue as the project proceeds into construction. Throughout the development of this project, input from local residents, municipalities, businesses, universities, and state and local officials has significantly shaped and improved the project and has been critical to the level of support that the project has received from the community. Given the scale and complexity of this estimated $1.5 billion project, construction is expected to take approximately 5 years, with completion in 2029. A special permit is issued by the City of Cambridge, which led to the Boston Properties offering the underground substation location and assuming a significant share of its development costs. Eversource stated that these arrangements with the City of Cambridge and BPX should ensure the customers are only paying the equivalent of what would cost to build a typical above-ground substation at the Fulkerson Street property, and the BXP is assuming most of the cost to build the underground vault for the new substation. The project has received overall support with one limited exception. Interveners participating in the proceeding included the cities of Cambridge and Somerville, MIT, and abutters in the Hampshire Street, Columbia Street area. All parties support the need for the project, but MIT has opposed the company's proposed route segment on Vassar Street near the MIT campus. This route segment is approximately 1 mile long. MIT proposed an alternative route segment based on the testimony of its own engineering witnesses. MIT introduced this proposal on September 5th, 2023, some 30 months after Eversource initiated a series of over 100 pre-filing meetings with stakeholders, including about 30 such meetings involving MIT representatives. MIT provided no prior indications to the siting board of its interest in this alternative route at either of the 2 public comment hearings or in written comments provided at that time. Eversource and Cambridge opposed the MIT proposal and asserted it is not viable. In addition, Eversource argues that MIT's proposal does not meet the standard of review, which requires that the alternative routes be clearly superior to the proposed route. The siting board reviews the applicant's set of criteria for identifying and evaluating routes to ensure that it has not overlooked or eliminated any routes that on balance are clearly superior to the proposed route. MIT has raised questions about defining the standard of what constitutes a clearly superior route alternative when the proposal is made by an intervener. In addressing that question, the tentative decision clarifies that the siting board's standard of clearly superior requires that an intervener must show that its route alternative is highly probable to be superior. The tentative decision finds that the MIT's proposed route segment is not clearly superior in any respect. We compared the Eversource route for Vassar Street with its associated detailed plans, a clear permit pathway, and land rights with the MIT proposal. MIT's proposed route is a conceptual plan without detailed engineering and many unanswered permitting and land access questions. In short, there are fundamental questions as to whether the MIT proposed route is constructible and viable. Eversource identifies construction impediments for the MIT segment, as does the City of Cambridge. Given its conceptual stage, the tentative decision also finds that the MIT proposals' cost estimates are speculative and uncertain. We also note that developing the MIT route options to a comparable level of detail as the Vassar Street segment would impose an additional delay, threatening reliability for an urgently needed project. The new substation equipment will be housed in an underground vault that would be approximately 110 feet deep. Someone at the street level would see air vents, the top of a set of stairs, and a park. Staff assessed multiple considerations for the substation, including land use impacts, water and wetlands, climate resiliency, noise, visual, traffic and air impacts, safety, and magnetic fields. The company proposed 5 different routes connecting the new substation to 4 other substations. We assessed each of the transmission route options and noticed alternatives for environmental impacts and cost. In particular, staff assessed routing options for impacts such as land use, noise, traffic, visual, air, soil contamination, hazardous waste, magnetic fields, and wetlands and water impacts. With the exception of hybrid route S15, all of the company's preferred routes are less expensive than their noticed alternative counterparts. For route S15, it is preferred over a less expensive noticed route because of route S15's lesser environmental impacts. All the routes are underground with relatively small differences in design, and the tentative decision finds all of the routes to be comparable for reliability. The tentative decision finds the project is consistent with state and local health and environmental policies, including the Restructuring Act, Green Communities Act, Clean Energy Act, and climate resiliency goals. The company's substation design included design and site planning to address flooding scenarios due to potential sea level rise and storm surges, and the tentative decision imposed a condition for periodic reviews of flooding risk and mitigation to ensure the continued reliability of the facilities. The substation site, as well as the proposed transmission routes, are in proximity to environmental justice populations. In determining the extent to which the company has met its obligation to environmental justice population, the tentative decision assesses the outreach efforts conducted by Eversource to inform residents of the project and participate in the conversation shaping the proposed project as presented in this proceeding. The energy and environmental benefits and environmental burdens associated with the proposed project were consistent with the goals of the Roadmap Act and environmental justice policies. The tentative decision concludes that the Greater Cambridge Energy Program project, as proposed, will provide a reliable energy supply with a minimum impact on the environment at the lowest possible cost, is necessary, serves the public convenience, and is consistent with the public interest. You all should have received a copy of the amendment sheet developed by staff, which includes clarifications and minor modifications of the TD, but does not include changes to the determinations presented in the tentative decision. Minor typographical edits were not included on the amendment sheet. The board received comments submitted by MIT, Eversource, and the City of Cambridge regarding the tentative decision. Eversource and Cambridge support the approval of the TD. In MIT's comments, MIT suggested mitigation language to address its concerns related to construction activities on Vassar Street and the need to protect MIT's existing underground infrastructure from construction-related damage. MIT notes the damage to its infrastructure, which serves the MIT campus, including residences, classrooms, laboratories, and other facilities, could result in a highly disruptive and prolonged outage in the services that MIT's central utility plant provides to the campus. In addition, MIT's comments address traffic and noise impacts related to construction activities. The amendment sheet provided by staff yesterday includes a limited addition to Condition O in response to the comments submitted by MIT and Eversource. The revised language of Condition O relates to a compliance filing to be submitted by Eversource, reporting on the progress of discussions with MIT related to those mitigation measures. MIT requested that the board resolve any areas remaining in dispute with Eversource after a presentation from each party regarding the disputed issues. Eversource has since filed supplemental comments with further suggested edits regarding Condition O. I expect that MIT may offer comments on both the amendment sheet language prepared by staff and the supplemental comments related to Condition O in Mr. DeTore's remarks today. I would be happy to answer any questions now or later in the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Sharkey. Appreciate that excellent presentation. Does the board have any questions for staff?
Thank you very much, Ms. Sharkey. One question, MIT's comments does talk about some concerns about overnight construction noise, particularly on Vassar Street. Can you talk about how frequent that might happen and just any details around the overnight noise issue associated with the construction?
Sure. For one thing, I'd like to mention that I expect that, consistent with the remarks that both Eversource and MIT have offered, that there will be discussion regarding the potential construction work hours, and that the company's construction activities are also reviewed and approved by the City of Cambridge Department of Public Works. So I expect that there will be a significant amount of debate about the most appropriate way in which the company can work in that particular area of the neighborhood, which would accommodate residents, the MIT facilities, and traffic in the area.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Secretary.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll next turn to Eversource for comments on the tentative decision. I note that Eversource written comments and is represented in this matter by Attorney Rosenzweig, Erica Hafner, Michael Kohler of Keegan and Werlin. Do you wish to make any comments at this time?
We do, and I'll go up to the podium if
Great.
that would be appropriate.
Yes, it would. That would be great.
Good morning, Secretary Tepper, Siding Board members and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As you said, my name is David Rosenzweig, and I'm appearing on behalf of Eversource Energy. We have today with us an extensive group of the SMEs and project team from Eversource who are here to support the project if issues arise during the board's deliberations. My comments today will be brief. At the outset, I want to thank the staff for their diligence throughout the process. In particular, I'd like to commend Presiding Officer Sharkey for a very comprehensive discussion of the project, the tentative decision, and the proposals made by the parties with respect to their comments on the tentative decision. I also want to thank the cities of Somerville and Cambridge for their support and significant contribution during the proceeding. With respect to the tentative decision, the staff's 224-page draft is a thorough and well-reasoned discussion and evaluation of the evidence based on established Siting Board standards. As I said, we sincerely appreciate their efforts. We are extremely grateful for the expeditious scheduling of a meeting on the tentative decision by the board. Given the complexity of the project and coordinating construction with Boston Properties and the rapid economic development in the city of Cambridge, schedule is of critical importance, and the timeliness of the board's actions is very much appreciated. Eversource supports the tentative decision and its recommended approval of Eversource's petition for a first-of-its-kind underground substation and 8 related jurisdictional transmission lines in the Cambridge, Somerville, and Allston areas of Boston. The project is acutely needed to ensure reliable electric service to customers in Cambridge and Somerville, as well as the ability of these cities to meet their very aggressive climate change goals, as well as the Commonwealth's climate change goals. The record evidence shows that the new substation is not only needed, but is superior to alternatives to meeting the time-sensitive need. The project has been rigorously designed and meets all state and local standards to ensure reliability, to minimize costs, and to minimize environmental impacts. The tentative decision details in extensive detail the route selection process undertaken by the company to identify and evaluate nearly 80 different routes for the necessary transmission lines and the associated new substation. This process entailed several years of discussions with stakeholders like the cities of Cambridge and Somerville and the respective agencies, the MBTA, the MWRA, DCR, Harvard, MIT, community groups, and abutters. As a result, the routes recommended for approval in the tentative decision as proposed by Eversource reflect a robust engagement process that yielded a set of routes that achieve a proper balancing of reliability, cost, and environmental impact. As of the date of the issuance of tentative decision, the only matter in dispute related to one segment of one route for one of the 8 transmission lines, specifically the route proposed by the company adjacent to the MIT campus on Vassar Street. MIT proposed an alternative route that it maintained was superior to the company's Vassar Street route. The company disagreed with MIT's assessment for all the reasons stated in the tentative decision. In accordance with Siting Board precedent, the company needed to show, and in fact did show, that it did not overlook or eliminate any routes that on balance are clearly superior to the proposed route. As the tentative decision finds, this is a standard that the company fully satisfied. In considering MIT's proposed route, the staff determined that clearly superior means the board must have a high degree of confidence that the alternative route is superior. We support the tentative decision's findings on route selection, particularly with respect to the approval of the company's proposed use of Vassar Street. In light of MIT's written comments filed on Tuesday, it now appears that MIT is willing to accede to the recommended approval in the tentative decision, subject to Condition O, with a process that provides for the company and MIT to meet and try to develop a mitigation plan regarding construction on Vassar Street. MIT has expressed that it would agree to that outcome with the added proviso that if the parties cannot reach agreement, they would submit their respective positions to the Siting Board for resolution. Yesterday afternoon, EFSB staff issued proposed amendments to the TD, adopting many of the modifications proposed by both the company and MIT to Condition O. Simultaneously with that, the company filed a few additional comments in MIT's proposed language for Condition O. In concept, the company is generally amenable to MIT's proposal, but we believe that several revisions to the staff's proposed amendments to Condition O are appropriate. First, throughout Condition O, there needs to be explicit recognition that the City of Cambridge has primary authority regarding the use of its roadways, such as Vassar Street, and that the city has an essential and indispensable role to play relative to potential mitigation. For example, there may be requests made by MIT that might be beneficial to MIT, but are inconsistent with how the city wishes to manage its roadways with respects to issues such as hours of construction, number of crews, depth of burial, detours, and the like. Therefore, the city needs to have a seat at the table, and we recommend several additional references in Condition O, inserting language that includes the City of Cambridge at each step of the process. Similarly, there may also be issues that the company cannot support based on ratepayer costs, scheduling, or complexity. Sorry about that. that involved mitigation requests that MIT submitted during the proceeding as Exhibit MIT-WSP-18, which has been the subject of discussions between the parties to date. We believe that condition O, as currently amended by the staff, should be revised accordingly. In addition, rather than tying the board's hands with the word will in terms of what the board does regarding any disputed mitigation measures, we think it is best to leave that to the board to its discretion after the 60-day negotiation period, determine what type of review, if any, it will conduct pursuant to condition O and what determinations it may make. Consistent with our comments on condition O filed yesterday, we propose replacing the word will with may in several locations so that the board retains flexibility and discretion concerning potentially disputed issues. With that, I will close. I am available to address any questions you may have on the project, the tentative decision, or our proposed revisions to condition O. The company respectfully requests that the board adopt the tentative decision, including the staff's proposed amendments with the revisions we've discussed today, as its final decision in this proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Attorney Rosenzweig? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. One question. So currently, condition F talks about temporary traffic control plans and traffic management plans being filed no less than 2 weeks in advance of construction beginning. And MIT has raised some concerns that that doesn't give a lot of time if there are some concerns about what those plans say. Does the company have any concerns about filing those plans earlier? Are there any limitations that would prevent it from being able to file those plans more than 2 weeks prior to construction?
I would say that there's some flexibility there, Commissioner Rubin. I would also say that those will be topics of discussion that are part of the ongoing negotiations between and among the city, MIT, and the company. And I would expect that those would be hopefully resolved and no surprise to MIT before they're filed. So while 2 weeks may not be the ultimate lower limit of what type of advance notice MIT would have, I suggest they're going to have considerable notice in advance of that. And hopefully we have a consensus on that by the end of those discussions.
Thank you, Attorney Rosenzweig.
Any other questions? All right, I have a couple. Sort of in the big picture, Mr. Rosenzweig, the company acknowledges that MIT has the right as an intervener to propose a alternative route.
That's correct.
I'm wondering for the future, how it is that an intervener like MIT could produce a route that would be clearly superior. What would they have had to do differently in order to show that their route was clearly superior? The company has much more information than the intervener does, right? And I'm just wondering whether we have a standard right now that is not meetable.
Well, I do think it is meetable, and that's why it needs to be stated in the way of clear superiority. I think in this instance, I can speak with great specificity about the degree of engagement there was with MIT, for one, in advance of filing, in advance of proposed routes being submitted with the siting board. It was about a 3-year period, and there were over 30 meetings during that period of time. And so they were not only aware, they were given considerable information with respect to the routes that the company proposed and routes that it did not propose and why it didn't propose those routes. And detailed information was shared. And so in this particular instance, they were armed with a considerable amount of data and information with which they could evaluate those routes and perhaps propose alternatives. I would say during that process, they did not propose a formal alternative. The company wasn't aware of their alternative until approximately a year and a half after it filed its petition in this proceeding. I think that weighs on your question, but to answer your question more directly, I do think it is a substantial effort that an intervener would have to come in and show that there's some aspect of the company's routes that it has proposed that are not clearly superior. I would suggest that in the evaluation of that, the siting board should evaluate the degree of engagement that's occurred with that respective intervener to evaluate whether there was an adequate opportunity for that intervener to be armed with information, what information was shared, as well as the resources of that institution or that intervener to see what kind of expertise they could bring to bear. In other words, if they were an abutter that had less means than MIT, and MIT has considerable means, perhaps there would be more latitude and more discretion given to the degree to which the route proposed by that theoretical intervener might be considered. But with someone who is an entity that is significant and substantial in its capabilities, MIT, and an expertise that's resonant with MIT as well as its financial resources, and given the degree of pre-filing engagement, which the Siting Board has emphasized on numerous occasions, I think that process here addressed the concern that you've raised.
Well, they hired an expert and they came in with an alternative route. They spent a significant amount of time and came in with a viable proposal. I'm just not understanding what it is that they could have done here. Yeah, I understand that you're saying, yes, they could have come in earlier on this. That definitely could have come in earlier. But let's say they for whatever reason couldn't come in earlier. Let's say it's not MIT. Let's say it's another abutter. If you're an abutter and you need to come into the Siting Board with an alternative route that is clearly superior to a utility proposed route that's been worked on for years, I don't know how you do that.
Just to correct one of the things you said, the findings of the company, with which the city of Cambridge agreed, and I believe the tentative decision agrees, is that the routes proposed by MIT actually didn't pass a test of viability.
Right, you argued that was not viable.
They were not viable. They had significant permitting constraints. They had significant technical constraints. There was inadequate attention given to details such as S-curves and how those would be constructed, the thermal ratings of the cables under such a circumstance, whether the MBTA would allow for a waiver of its directorate with regard to the Grand Junction corridor. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
And I think, just to put it out there, this did not meet a
It
litmus
didn't get
test of-
to the question
It did
of-
not.
yeah.
It did not. And
Mhm.
so we don't get to the question that you asked. It is incumbent on any intervener, I would suggest, to propose a route that has viability. And there is some flexibility there, I think, that could be accorded to the Siting Board in terms of, given, as I said, the abutter, the circumstances, and the resources that are available to them. And it may be a fluid standard that does not suggest that there's just a rigid test that doesn't reflect the degree of engagement, the expertise and resources of that intervener. But surely there has to be a viability test that any route that is proposed by an intervener has to meet in order for it to be eligible to be considered in a test relative to its clear superiority relative to what the company may have evaluated.
So I guess what I'm hearing you say is that for an abutter, the best course is to make sure that you talk to the company prior to coming before the EFSB, take the opportunities of the public process, and raise ideas about different routes ahead of time so that they can be evaluated by the company.
That's part of it, but I would actually say the obligation is more so on the company to do that as part of its outreach process more than
Fair enough.
the obligation being on the intervener. But I'd also add, an excellent example of what I'm talking about, where the company actually changed its mind, was with respect to Route S15 in this proceeding, going from Cambridge to Somerville. Based on the residents that are along Columbia and Hampshire Streets in Somerville and Cambridge, they raised concerns with regard to that route and the impacts it would cause them at very narrow streets, vibrations, noise, disruption, traffic. And based on their comments and frankly, the Siting Board's staff's input, the company reconsidered its as-filed preferred route on S15 and said, you know what, there's merit to this. Let's take a harder look at it. Let's redouble our efforts. Let's go back and do the outreach. Let's talk to the agencies involved. And the company at the end of that analysis said, you know what, their route is clearly superior. It might be more expensive, but it really does mitigate substantial impacts. And that's the type of analysis that the company is willing to undertake on a case-by-case basis if an intervener or the staff proposes some modifications to a route that it's proposed, and it has merit. We're not locked in and inflexible on what we propose just because we proposed it. If there's merit to a proposal, we'll present that to the siting board and recognize the superiority of it and have that become the preferred route that we would recommend the siting board approve. And that's what occurred here.
Did that happen during this proceeding or prior to?
It happened during the early stages of the
Early
proceeding.
stages, mhm.
After the group that I referred to as SCA, which is the residents on Columbia and Hampshire, raised concerns at the public comment hearing and during the early discovery process. And to give staff credit, they issued an information request to the company that said, what about what they're saying? Is there a way of patching together a couple of your routes, avoiding some of those impacts on Columbia and Hampshire Street and Cambridge and Somerville, and coming up with a route that may be viable and indeed superior? And we looked at that, and it took about a year to go through the process of engagement, evaluation, agency consultations. And at the end of that year process, we said, you know what? That's a better route. We want to go with it. We recommend that route become the preferred route.
And you renoticed that?
Yes, we
Yeah.
did. On
Okay.
2 occasions.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, just a question on condition O. I think I'm a little bit confused about where we are now on condition O. So is this document that they produced for us?
Yes, that was
This is-
yesterday.
So, Mr. Rosenzweig, which one of these things are you proposing now?
Yeah, we were trying to be clear and
I
made
know, I'm
create
sorry, I just
confusion.
got confused.
Yes. So what we did in this is the first paragraph, I think you're looking at, which has the title Proposed Condition O. Are you looking at that?
Yes, I think that looks like this.
Yep.
Uh-huh,
That's it.
okay.
The first paragraph is Condition O as originally drafted by the siting board staff with red lettering, excuse me, not redlining, red lettering indicating additional language that we proposed should be part of that Condition O. And
So
My-
just
my-
real quick, is this the condition O that is in the tentative
the
decision?
Condition O that's in the tentative decision in the red markings are our additional suggested additions to that Condition O language, which staff has now, at least for that first paragraph, adopted
Accepted.
and recommended it to the board to.
So is that now the next document? So you're saying the first paragraph that we're seeing here is now the condition that the amendment that the board is offering?
That is correct. They may have
Yeah,
some
sorry.
comments on that, but that's what it's intended to be.
Okay, all right.
The second paragraph takes comments that were filed after the town decision by MIT on Tuesday of this week. And we have redlined that language to say, all right, we hear where MIT wants to go, but we think there's some modifications that should be made to that condition based on MIT's additional language that it proposed to Condition O. And to be clear to everybody about what we were proposing striking out, we did it in one paragraph with redlining. And then below, we provide the entirety of Condition O as we would like to see it, or as we're proposing it, by accepting all those redlining and not making it confusing to look at.
Okay. I think I understand. Thank you.
But to further clarify, there were 2 ships passing in the night yesterday at about 4:35. One of them was the amendment sheet that presiding officer Sharkey sent out. And about 4 minutes later, or plus or minus, the comments that Mr. Rosenzweig is referring to came in, so they did not speak to
Okay.
each other.
All right, so the errata sheet that we have, that we would
Yeah.
receive from the siting board is not this first paragraph on this document.
That's correct.
Okay. So there, all right. So right now, what we're thinking about is the errata sheet that staff provided us last night. And we're thinking about changes that the company wants to make. It would be helpful, Mr. Rosenzweig, maybe if you could think while other people are talking about what would be your proposed changes to the amendment, the errata sheet condition. So you don't need to do that right now. They have the errata sheet, right? Okay.
That's right.
All right. So maybe you can think about that so that we're all talking on the same document.
And to make efficient use of time,
Sure.
why don't I yield the podium and get that done, and then
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. While other people are talking, why don't you take the time, or we could even take a break if that would be helpful.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, there are several interveners in this proceeding: the City of Cambridge, the City of Somerville, MIT, Save Columbia and Hampshire Neighborhood Association, and 10 individual pro se resident interveners. Written comments were received from the City of Cambridge and MIT on the tentative decision and have been provided to the board. Does Council for City of Cambridge like to make a comment?
Yes, Catherine Watkins, who's the Commissioner of DPW in Cambridge, would like to make a short statement.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Watkins?
Is here okay?
You can do it there if it's fine.
Sure. So Secretary Tepper and members of the Siting Board, thank you for your time. Catherine Watkins, Commissioner of the Department of Public Works for the City of Cambridge. And I'll be very brief, but for all the reasons outlined in our submitted comments, the city strongly supports the tentative decision issued by the EFSB staff and appreciates the collaborative nature in which Eversource has approached this from beginning. As we know, this is a critical project for the city that will allow Eversource to meet the growing energy needs of the city and also support our continuing transition to a carbon neutral future. Now that the routing and key permitting decisions are hopefully being finalized. I'm sorry.
A little slower, and he just needs you to repeat that sentence again,
Okay,
please.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
This is a critical project for the city that will allow Eversource to meet the growing electricity needs in the area and support our continuing transition to a carbon neutral future. Now that the routing and key permitting decisions are hopefully being finalized, I am optimistic that Eversource, MIT, and the city have a clear mission of working together to see this project successfully implemented. And since much of the bulk of the project is located in Cambridge, we know and understand the importance of getting all the construction details correct. And I want to take a moment just to address the one outstanding issue identified in the tentative decision, which is the construction mitigation measures. I appreciate the additions to Condition O, and we also support the additional edits proposed by Eversource to specifically include the city in these ongoing discussions. By having all three of us working together, we can ensure that the proposed mitigations are responsive to MIT's concerns, particularly around their critical central utility plant, and that these mitigations are supported by both Eversource as the owner of the infrastructure and the city as the owner of the property. And to that end, Eversource is already scheduling weekly meetings with the three parties, and we have each identified who will lead the collaboration, and equally important, who will be the decision makers for each entity on the construction details and mitigation. For the city, our city engineer, James Wilcox, will be leading the discussions on their behalf, and MIT has identified their director of campus construction, Christos Marvalis, to lead their efforts on the construction details. We have worked closely with Mr. Marvalis in historically on numerous complex construction projects in the heart of Kendall Square and are excited to work with him on this project. So in closing, I would just emphasize again our appreciation for all of the work on this project and our unwavering commitment to continuing to collaborate with Eversource and MIT to ensure Eversource can meet our energy needs. And that is what really our residents, businesses, and institutions deserve. So I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does Council for Somerville, is Council for Somerville here? No. Okay. All right, Mr. Dottori, would you like to make some comments? Yep. Yes. Yes.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Siting Board. My name is John Dottori. I'm representing MIT in this proceeding. I think I start out by saying probably the one thing that I agree with Eversource on is an appreciation for all the staff's hard work on this. They certainly put the time and the energy in on it. We don't agree with the findings, but we certainly can't say that they didn't consider our arguments. What I'm going to address this morning is the company's supplemental comments on MIT's Condition O. At the outset, let me say that MIT always assumed that the city would be a part of this negotiation. It's their streets. We didn't put anything in there because the original language in Condition O didn't talk about that, but we welcome the city's involvement. We really appreciate the city's comments about their willingness to work together. I have to say that we are very concerned about Eversource's supplemental comments because as we read them, they're imposing severe and we think unreasonable limits on the scope of what we can even talk about in the negotiations, never mind what ultimately ends up being reasonable. And there are two of these that I'd like to focus on. One is they've restricted the discussion to mitigation on Vassar Street. Now, it's true that Vassar Street creates the greatest problems. That's why we proposed an alternative route for that. We certainly highlighted that in the comments. But I mean, in the testimony, we were very clear about that Ames Street was a problem. I mean, one of the lines goes right through Ames Street. We said we need mitigation for Ames Street as well. So again, literally the way you read this is we can only talk about Vassar Street, and we think that doesn't make any sense at all. That's not true. Please correct me. The second is that the proposed language also limits mitigation measures to ones that are raised in a very specific MIT exhibit. Now, as a threshold matter, as we pointed out in our comments, MIT proposed mitigation measures in several different exhibits. So why you would say you can only talk about mitigation measures in one exhibit but not the other exhibits doesn't make any sense to us at all. But beyond that, we don't think that's the proper criterion to apply for defining what the scope of negotiation is going to be. Like those, the testimony was filed, I don't know, 9-10 months ago, based on the information that MIT had at that time. Since then, obviously we have more information about the project, and as development and design of the project continues on, we'll find out more about it, and it may be that different mitigation measures may be appropriate to at least discuss. So let me give you kind of a practical example of how I think this could play out. This is purely a hypothetical situation, but let's say in the exhibit that Eversource references that MIT says, for this infrastructure, particularly infrastructure on Ames Street, we think the line has to go 10 feet under. Then as we're discussing now, we find more about the design, et cetera. It turns out, we at least think it should go 12 feet under. Well, again, the way this is drafted, Eversource just has to say, hey, sorry, guys, you said 10 feet back then. That's all we have to talk about. 12 feet's completely off the table. So confining, that just isn't the right criterion to go into a negotiation with. We think the criterion should be what constitutes reasonable mitigation. And all three parties have a chance to discuss that. We don't think there should be any preset limits on what we can talk about. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. And I think it's really inconsistent with certainly the spirit of what the city said about being willing to talk to MIT and figure out the best way to mitigate things. The company also deleted the section about us having a chance to state our position in front of the siting board. Again, I mean, that's just the way the siting board operates, right? If there's a disputed issue, the siting board always wants to hear from both sides, and that's all we're saying. When we wrote the changes that we were proposing, we were trying to make them simple, straightforward, and without any bias to any party. We're not asking the siting board to pre-approve any particular mitigation position. We're not asking the siting board to put us in a favorable position, but the company's comments are doing that. They're saying, hey, you can only talk about a very specific, limited range of mitigation issues, which we don't think makes any sense. We reviewed the comments, the amendments by the staff, and we support them, completely. So to close, we respectfully request that the siting board reject the company's comments and accept the current amendments proposed by the staff. Thank you.
There are questions for Mr. Dottori. So, Mr. Dottori, I just want to ask you sort of along the same lines of the questions that I was asking Mr. Rosenzweig. Just thinking about the future, what would you propose the process should be when an intervener submits an alternative route, or how an intervener should submit an alternative route?
So I come at it from a different perspective. Let me start by saying, number one, I think the definition of clearly superior is a reasonable one. If you look at the dictionary and all that, I don't have a problem with that. I think number two, the citing board made it very clear that I think you almost have an obligation to consult with the company earlier on. They really took MIT to task for that. And so I think if that's the policy going forward, that's not an unreasonable policy. I'm biased here, and I'm not looking to relitigate the whole case, but we just think the findings were wrong. We didn't agree with the findings on all the issues that Mr. Rosenzweig laid out. And of course, like I said, we're not going to relitigate the case, this morning. So bottom line, I don't think we have an issue with the standard. Maybe there's an issue about giving more notice about the obligation, in a sense, to participate, in the engagement with the company. But in terms, strictly speaking, in terms of how one defines clearly superior and how one applies that to the evidence in the case, we don't really have any objection.
You don't have any objection to what currently is in the tentative decision?
We don't have any objection
In
to
terms of
approach.
in terms of the standard, in terms of the approach.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So just to be 100% clear, so the amendment on Amendment O, on Condition O, that was provided by the staff, you are okay with?
Yes, we support that.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, sure.
And I just have one question.
The staff amendment doesn't restrict anything. Yes. Sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
No worries. Just one question. I just want to clarify that MIT is not looking for any changes to proposed Condition F, which talks about the traffic management plans 2 weeks prior to construction?
No, thank you for raising that. I think, again, one other point, but I agree with Mr. Rosenzweig on, I think those traffic issues will be discussed, as long as they're not restricted too much the way the company wants to do it, as long as we have a free negotiation. I think we can discuss those traffic issues in that context, so that we would have some, a real ability to engage on that issue before they're filed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else, Madam Chair?
No, thank you.
Thanks for the time.
Could I ask one? Of
course.
Just one sort of procedural question.
Sure.
We want to make sure that the final version of Condition O that I think we're going to talk about again does reflect that the city of Cambridge is going to have a seat at the table. It's not as proposed by the staff. It's not, that's not entirely clear. So to the extent we weren't clear about that in our comments, we just want to make sure that that gets addressed in the final version of Condition O.
Fair enough. Thank you for raising that. Okay, is there anybody else here that's an intervener or per se intervener that would like to make any comments? Okay. Seeing none. Do we have any members of the public who have asked to speak to this morning?
We do not.
And do we have any members of the public who are here who are not on the list that would like to speak, or on Zoom that would like to speak?
Just give me one moment. Let me just scan our attendees. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak, please use the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen, which is where the cursor is pointing. Not seeing anybody at this time.
Okay. All right, then we will move on with deliberations. How are we doing on time? It's 10:15.
We were going to take a break at 10:30, plus or minus.
Yeah, Ms. Evans? Yes. Break now. That's what I was going to suggest as well. Yeah, I mean, I would just say with respect to the language, it sounds like to me that everyone has the same intent with respect to the language. It sounds like everybody is in agreement that all parties should be involved. It sounds like everybody's in agreement that this should be a collaborative effort where everybody will try to resolve all the issues ahead of time, only in the case where parties have not been able to come to a particular agreement, may they come to the EFSB. If they come to the EFSB, then the EFSB will make a decision about what's reasonable. So it sounds like everybody is basically on that same page. And so it sounds like the only thing that you all need to discuss during these 15 minutes is the scope, to the extent that there's going to be a limitation on the scope, or you'll decide whether there are any other issues. But to me, it sounds like the spirit is there. It sounds like everybody is basically on the same page. So let's just get the wording right. And we will come back in 15 minutes at 10:35. Let's go off the record. All right, let's go ahead and get back on the record. And we're going to start our deliberations. And to begin that, we need a main motion, which would be to adopt the tentative decision. So can somebody make that motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to leave that motion on the floor. And we'll vote on it at the end of deliberations with any potential amendments. So we're now going to deliberate. And first, I think we will consider the amendments to the tentative decision proposed by staff. And then we can consider whether we all have any other amendments. So with the staff proposed amendments, I would like to ask if there is a motion to amend the tentative decision to include the amendments included in the staff's proposed sheet. But actually, no, I don't want to do that. Let's not do that. So instead, let's hear from the parties about if you were able to make any progress on condition O.
Thank you, Secretary Tepper. During the break, I had the opportunity to speak to counsel for MIT and counsel for the city of Cambridge, and to relate what I think may be a consensus with respect to the staff proposed amendments. We actually have very few suggestions that we would like to propose, and I'll let the parties speak for themselves as to whether they support or don't oppose those changes. On the staff amendment sheet, if you look at the bottom of the second page.
Is there any way we can put that up?
Yes. Could you?
Do you think you? I'm sorry.
Mr. Chang is putting that on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chang.
Okay, we're there.
Okay.
Here we go. Regarding the last proposed amendment on that page, at page 223, line 34, what we would propose, and I think there is a consensus, is that everywhere that the names, the company and MIT are described within that language, that the word, phrase, City of Cambridge is added to that to make clear that at every step of the process, the City of Cambridge is an active party with the opportunity to participate in all of the mitigation discussions and recommendations that will be considered by the parties. And other than that proposal, the only other change that we propose is that in the third to last line, the fourth to last word in that sense is will. And we would propose that the word become may. And I think that is a position, I won't speak for the staff, but that there is no objection to, or there is support from the other parties on that word change. And other than that, our discussions yielded no other issues that required amendment or proposed revisions.
And the company is has no other comments on any of the amendments offered by the staff?
That is correct.
Mr. Dettori?
Mr. Rosenzweig expressed it very accurately.
Okay,
Mr. Rosenzweig expressed it very accurately.
you're okay with the may instead of will?
We don't object to that, correct?
Okay, all right. City of Cambridge
The same, the city concurs with all those changes. Thank you.
and staff? All good?
We find the changes proposed by the interveners and the company to be acceptable. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Does any of the board members have changes to any of the other amendments on the amendment sheet by the staff? I had just one sort of clarifying one, which is on the page 198 through 99 on line 23. Down to the bottom, where the sentence that reads, if MIT and Eversource do not agree, The next phrase is on any of MIT's proposed mitigation measures. That on any is confusing because it could be all or any. So I think it maybe just say one or more. Meaning you could read it to say only if they don't agree with all of them would they then propose mitigation measures. I'm just making it clear that they could have one problem or many problems. Okay. So the sentence would read, if MIT and Eversource do not agree on one or more of MIT's proposed measures in such brief, blah, 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 consider, okay? Is this, okay, all right.
Sorry, could I
Yes, of
make
course.
one clarification? The language, this is the language that's in the body of the tentative decision. So the same changes, I presume, that we make in
Yes.
condition O will be made in this language to include the city of Cambridge as the city of Cambridge in places where it says the company in MIT.
Good point, yes. Is there any other places that are like that in the body of the order that would need to be modified?
We'll make sure that all of the places where this appears is consistent.
Okay, great. All right, then I think what we should do is, I think we should get a motion on the amendment to the tentative decision. So it would be a motion to amend the tentative decision to include the proposed amendments that are included in the staff's proposal as amended today in this hearing. Would somebody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right. So is there any discussion, further discussion on the tentative decision, on the amendments? This is sort of your time to talk about if you have any concerns with the decision and express how you feel.
So I wanted to acknowledge that this is a situation where there was a different proposed location for the substation that was above ground on Fulkerson Street in East Cambridge. There is a recognition by the company, and I think the interveners that that location was raising a number of concerns for people in the communities. And the company listened to that feedback and made changes. I've been to a lot of siting board meetings, and this is the very first one I've been to where there is not a long line of members of the public who are coming to complain or raise concerns. So I think that speaks very highly of the work that the company has done in partnership with the cities as well as with the interveners. So, and just to say that we have a number of pro se interveners and they did not come today. I just think that just because we don't have a lot of people speaking, that actually says a whole lot about the project and the collaboration that has happened. And that has not been the case for some of the other projects. So I want to commend the parties for the time that has been put in, thank the interveners very much for working together, and the fact that during a 15-minute break, some amendments have been proposed uniformly by various parties just says a lot. So I want to commend everybody in the room for the work that's happened on this project.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Mahaney.
Thank you. I just have one suggested change to offer in the decision on page 16. Footnote 14.
Okay.
Okay, so this footnote in the middle of it, towards the end of the second sentence, where it's referring to record requests EFSB 4-1, I just want to make an amendment to that sentence that reflects the information that is in the record request. So if we go in the middle of that sentence, this is hard, where it says Vicinity Energy has announced its intention. So Vicinity Energy has announced its intention to install electric steam boilers, and I would suggest we change the sentence after that to read install electric steam boilers and industrial scale heat pump technology, striking the comma based on, leaving in, again, adding and, leaving an industrial scale heat pump technology, and then striking that second comma. When you look at the record requests, it's clear that there are two different technologies being installed, not one based on the other.
Understood. Oh, sorry. So, the rest of the sentence would remain the same, including after the comma, that will require substantial amount of power. That rest of the sentence stays the same. Sorry, substantial amount of power.
Correct.
Okay. So it's just the and okay, fixing that.
Yep.
To show that there are two technologies. Got it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns? So I will, I'm sorry, did you want to say something? Joan? Yeah, we're gonna have to change the motion. I was just gonna do it after I talk.
Thank you.
Okay. So I wanna echo the comments of the commissioner of the tremendous amount of outreach that happened in this proceeding. This is an extremely important project to the city of Cambridge and to the people that live there, and it is an innovative project that was very, it took a lot of time and energy to get to where you are today. This was not a process that happened quickly, but the benefits of spending that time up front was the hearing that you're having today, which is one that's going to move quickly and one that is going to leave everybody feeling like and knowing that they were heard and that their concerns were listened to, and in some cases addressed, some cases not, but at least considered. And this is the kind of outreach that we have been talking about for many years, that we'd like to see. I remember Ann Berwick in this seat saying, you absolutely need to talk to the towns before you come to see us. So, I mean, there was a time where very little outreach was done, and I think we've come in a very long way in this period of time. And I think it's pretty exciting and noteworthy about this underground substation. I mean, it's very novel, exciting. I think everybody's really, all the nerds who are into this stuff are really looking forward to seeing how it works, and seeing the progress that is made. And it could be a model for other places and around the country. So really want to express appreciation to everybody involved and the company in particular on being thoughtful, creative, and coming through this process with an open mind, and being willing to listen and make changes to the project as necessary. So thank you for that. I also want to express my appreciation to the staff. I have read a lot of siting board orders. This one is particularly thorough, and siting board orders are almost always thorough. But this is a very well thought out, very well reasoned, looking at every issue raised, and addressing them in a way that is thoughtful and consistent with prior precedent. So I know that there were a lot of people who worked on this order, and you should be very proud of the work that you've done and the hearings that you held on this matter. Very thorough consideration of the evidence. We were just talking about John Young and how he was integral in coming up with a S15 change. That's because this staff is very thorough and very dedicated to their jobs and making sure that they get things right. So thank you all very much for that. And I think that is all I have to say. Anybody else? Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretary Tepper. I do want to note, we have a rather unique role at the DPU, as sometimes I call it, we are stewards of the ratepayers' dollar. And I do think Hearing Officer Sharkey had a pretty good description of how this all came to be in terms of customers are paying only the equivalent of what it would cost to build a typical above-ground substation at the Fulkerson Street property. Because you have these unique arrangements with the City of Cambridge and Boston Properties, Inc., because we're now looking at electric sector modernization plans right now where we're talking of dozens of new substations and dozens of substation upgrades. And I would not want to raise expectations around the state that, oh, we want what Cambridge got. We want everything underground. We want to spend $1.5 billion. So I think it's, again, echoing some of the things Secretary Tepper said, it's great that this was all worked out, but these are unique circumstances to Cambridge. I think it's fabulous that everybody got together and made this happen, the contributions by Boston Properties, Inc. and the city. But it's not easily replicable, and I just wouldn't want to raise hopes that as we install all these substations that are contemplated by the electric sector modernization plans, that we're going to be undergrounding them and spending $1.5 billion. Anyway, thanks for the good work of the parties.
I appreciate that, but I think it also sends a message to the private sector about what it means to have a partnership and what it means to have collaboration and what it means to have everybody coming together on a project where the private sector also benefits from a project moving quickly, where private sector benefits from being collaboration with the public and with having a real collaboration with the company and the community. I think that in order for us to implement this ginormous transition that we are in the middle of, it is going to take partnership. It's not going to be done just by the utilities and not all of it can end up on the utility bill. So we've got to find different ways to finance, and this is a creative way of doing it. And I appreciate it. I agree that this is not a thing that is going to happen for every substation by no means. But I definitely would say it is a good example of how a public-private partnership can work well. Okay. All right. So I think we need to modify the motion that is on the table with respect to the amendments. So this would be a motion to accept the tentative decision with the amendments provided by the staff as modified today with respect to condition O, and also a change to whatever page Elizabeth was talking about.
Page 16, footnote 14.
As specified by Commissioner Mahaney. And I think, yes, go ahead, Joan. You can fix how I'm saying this.
I think the board already has a motion on the floor regarding the amendment sheet as with condition O amendment. I think the board could vote on that.
Okay.
Then the board can vote on the additional changes on page 14.
Okay.
And then you go back to the main motion, which is on the floor right now. I think you want to
Perfect.
take care of the
Separate.
amendments separately.
Understood. Okay, so let's do that. Let's forget everything I just said. And let's go back and just vote on the motion that we have on the table with respect to the amendments. So all in favor of,
Let me,
wait, what?
we're on Zoom, so we have to do a roll call.
Oh, okay, let's do a roll call.
Um,
Andy, could you please do a roll
I
call?
would be delighted. Chair Van Nostrand,
Aye.
Commissioner Rubin,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Heipel,
Aye.
General Counsel Costco,
Yes.
Mr. Bonfilio. Yes. Mr. Watson.
Yes.
And Chair Tepper.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so now let's go to the amendment suggested by Commissioner Mahaney.
You'll need a motion for that.
Yes, so can somebody make a motion? Because clearly I'm having trouble doing.
I move to support Commissioner Mahaney's proposed amendment on page 16 in footnote 14.
Second?
All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Van Nostrand?
Aye.
Commissioner Rubin?
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Yes.
Commissioner Heipel?
Aye.
General Counsel Costco? Your microphone was muted. We didn't hear you.
Apologies. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Bonfiglio? Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Chair Tepper?
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
So now we'll call for a vote on the motion to approve the tentative decision as amended. Can we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Chair Van Nostrand?
Aye.
Commissioner Rubin?
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Yes.
Commissioner Heipel?
Aye.
General Counsel Costco?
Yes.
Mr. Bonfiglio?
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
Chair Tepper?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. The decision as amended is approved.
Congratulations. With that vote, the siding board is going to proceed to issue a final decision, inclusive of the approved amendments. Staff is hereby directed to prepare a final decision as amended for my signature. Before we adjourn, is there any other items for discussion today? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
Actually, we need a
Nope,
motion
Oh,
and a vote.
I just,
Sorry.
I just chaired the MWRA meeting the other day, and I did a much better job there than I'm doing today. But
Madam
yes.
Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote? Does somebody second that, please?
Second.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, here we go. Chair Van Nostrand.
Aye.
Commissioner Rubin.
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Yes.
Commissioner Heipel.
Aye.
General Counsel Costco. Mr. Bonfiglio. Mr. Watson.
Yes.
And Chair Tepper.
Yes. All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Off the record.
We're off the record.